Welcome, and today I wanted to look at some images of old San Francisco. And we have before, but some recent images have just surfaced, October 21st of this year, and I thought we would have a little look. But first I wanted to talk about this New Madrid earthquake in 1812. Right at the end of 1811, up to March of 1812. There were over 2,000 earthquakes in the central Midwest, and between 6,000 to 10,000 earthquakes in Missouri, where New Madrid is located. In the known history of the world, no other earthquakes have ever lasted so long or produced so much evidence of damage as the New Madrid earthquake. 3 of the earthquakes are on America's top list for most devastation. A magnitude in 1811 of 8.1 on the Richter scale, and on February 7th at as much as 8.8 magnitude. So 1811, 1812, even though we can see that the Richter scale was invented in 1935 by Charles Francis Richter. So it's invented in 1935, and yet they're talking about the Richter scale in 1811. And strange things that occurred were the Mississippi River running backwards, giant crevices opening up, running north to south. They had to chop down trees to use as bridges, missing people all over who were most likely swallowed up by the earth. Some fissures were as long as 5 miles. And some more phenomena was sand boils. The world's largest sand boil was created by the New Madrid earthquake. It's 1.4 miles long. Locals call it the beach. And seismic tar balls, small pellets of petroleum that solidify. And this was interesting, earthquake lights. Lights flash from the ground caused by quartz crystals being squeezed. The phenomena is called seismoluminescence. And water was thrown up by the earthquake, and it was lukewarm, thrown up from the ground. The shaking caused the water to heat up, and or quartz light heating the water. Very interesting, all this energetic talk about quartz. And the skies turned dark during the earthquake. So dark that lights and lamps didn't help. The air smelled bad, and it was hard to breathe. It's speculated that it was smog containing dust particles caused by the eruption of warm water into cold air. There was loud thunder. Sounds of distant thunder and loud explosions accompanied the earthquake. So very interesting. And then finally this tale of a comet. The earthquake was preceded by the appearance of a great comet, which was visible around the globe for 17 months. And it was at its brightest during the earthquakes. The comet, with an orbit of 3,000 years, was last seen during the time of Ramses in Egypt. So very, very fascinating. And really, without saying it, this sounds like something else. The more we read, the less this seems like an earthquake. And speaking of earthquakes, this brings me back to San Francisco. And San Francisco really starting out in the 1850s, 1848, and we have a sudden boom from 1,000 to 25,000 people. And so here, this is one of the most fascinating things. We have this population boom of 25,000 people in 1 year. The rapid growth complicated city planning efforts, leaving a legacy of narrow streets that continues to characterize the city to this day. The population boom included many workers from China who came to work in the gold mines. 25,000. Again, 1848 to 1849, 25,000 people. And here's a picture, for example, in 1850. So really, within 2 years of the inception of this fine city, 2 years. And this is nothing. This is 1875. So 25 years later. 25 years later, completely built out. And this picture is provided by Wiki. I'm just amazed. And this is also the one that does not depict any people. And yet, if we look at pictures from supposed earlier time periods, especially with these new pictures that have been released, as you can see here, 300 images added in October of 2019. So very interesting, and I've had a look at most of them. And here, for example, we have 1865. So we can go from a completely barren city like this, completely void of any people, occasionally a horse, and I think on the far right side I have also seen people. But this is just mind-blowing. Even in 25 years, let's just say there was this population boom of miners. This does not look like a city of miners. I mean, we just have Antiquitech everywhere, and just beautiful, elaborate architecture. I mean, look at this in the background. This is just amazing, and this is far away, and look at the size. One of my favorite pictures, no doubt. And here, this amazing cathedral. And again, a group of miners, of what they told us, mostly originally Chinese miners, and just not seeming like the architecture we would expect to see. But let's get back to these 300 images, and here, this seeming like the introduction to a population, and it is. It is, but I just think that the story is different as to the reasons for the introduction of this population. We're told it's a gold rush, and a gold rush, should be very Wild West looking. We have seen pop-up gold rush towns, and this is something else. And here we have a date of 1865 in this particular picture. 1865, so 15 years, supposedly, after the creation of this gold booming town, we're completely built out. Towers, everything. And yet the people looking odd, as always. And here this seems to be some sort of a parade, military perhaps. And people gathered around, very uninteresting event. And here it seems like the most amazing thing that's probably happened in a while, as the whole town has gathered to witness this. And here you go. Here are your people that found it so important to build something like this. These people look like they're fresh off the boat, and yet we have a complete city. And I've seen many cities and hiked on their hills and looked out. And oftentimes populations of 1 million. And this is what we get. This is what you see. This is clearly a population of 1 million in 1878. And yet where are the people? How could you keep 1 million people And I have featured this image before, and I always wanted to share the shadow here, just to remind people that this is not an early morning picture. This is about 10, 11 o'clock, maybe even 2 o'clock in the afternoon, based on these small shadows and a high sun. And here, this city just seeming too big and too built out for these people. And this mud that they're standing on, what looks pretty fresh. And even this image from 1855. So this is 5 years after the inception. 5 years. We're told 1,000 people arrived in 1849. And the truth is, this does look kind of junky. But it doesn't look new either. It doesn't look like 5, 10 years old. It looks old. This looks like it's near the end of its life. It doesn't look like it's been built within 10 or 15 years. Looks like it's been hit by a bunch of mud and almost got knocked over. And really amazing. Power lines everywhere. Some sort of fan right here. I'm not sure. And just pretty amazing. And this does have more of a Old West, minor town feel. And up here on the hill we have what looks like some ruins of some pretty glorious structures, actually. And just ruins at this early point, according to the narrative. And here again, 1855, so just 5 years. Boom. 5 years. And this doesn't look like the nicer part of town. Not like what we saw in some of these other photos. But just really amazing. In 5 years, to be built out, the grid in place, and really nothing looking quite right. Really fascinating photos to be witnessing these for who knows how long it's been since they've been viewed. 1875, a beautiful cathedral, and just really seeming like the abandoned and inherited city once again. And here it seems this has been cleared, and yet still signs of a cataclysm. 1880s, just remarkable. Look at the Greco-Roman build-out here. This architecture is just mind-blowing. 1880s, so we're talking about 30 years. So in 30 years, this is what the miners progressed into. And just fascinating. I don't know if all of this has been leveled, and the streets just seeming muddy. And yet this older civilization clearly had infrastructure. Look at this. I mean, here getting an amazing glimpse. Pre-power, according to our narrative. And this is just high-tech. And clearly railway systems. Looks like we just need to clear the mud off of them and they'll be operational soon. Just perfectly inherited and beautiful. Can't really make out what time it is there. And I'm just going to fast forward real quick, and I'll leave the link to this. I encourage all of you to check it out. Just fascinating and mind-blowing in every way. And I'm definitely going to spend more time. But without dragging on, I want to fast forward to the earthquake now. The great earthquake of San Francisco, which just cooks this town. Not only was it an earthquake, but it turns into a fire. And this thing is just a monster. And just as the strange happenings with the New Madrid earthquake, well, this thing is just equally as anomalous. I mean, it does not topple buildings, it shreds them apart. And completely turning this city into what looks like a war zone rather than an earthquake event. And as you can see in most of these pictures, without me going into it too much, is just like in the California fires in recent times. These fires tear buildings apart, but do not touch the old power lines or telegraph or whatever they want to call them. Nevertheless, the wood remains in every picture. A fire that does not burn wood but tears buildings apart. And what is going on? These ones actually appear to be made of metal, which is just fascinating because we don't even do that now. Very amazing. And again here we can have a look at the destruction. Very interesting. A shoe right here. And again, seeming like something else. A very strange story that will require a lot more investigation. And as if this isn't strange enough, the city is rebuilt in a short amount of time. And it seems like a lot of the same structures, which is even stranger. Down here, I'm not sure. This might be the site of the World's Fair. Not sure at all. And this was a really nice picture that I wanted to share. The City Hall ruins in 1906. And just amazing. Again, we have to realize, 50 years later, this has now been built and destroyed by a city of miners. And look at these columns and the inside, really showing the composition and this kind of exterior and interior. Not sure what the composition is, but very interesting. And again, let's just remember that a fire and earthquake has destroyed this. I mean, it looks like some giant beast with claws has just ripped right through it. But let's just imagine that somehow a fire could do this. Again, the fire has preserved this little tree or bush, really seeming like a little yucca or Joshua tree, I'm not sure, but clearly happy as could be. A lot to be said with these photos, and I just thought I would share this today. Here they tell us this is an unknown location. Unknown location? Look at this place. This should be known. And these photos just surfacing suddenly make me think about who has released these photos. These are a real blessing, a part of our history and a major puzzle piece. Unknown location, and this is just mind-blowing. Burnt, again, power poles remaining, trees remaining, and absolutely fascinating. And I think I'm just going to end it there. So I thank you so much for joining me today. And again, I'll leave the link to all this. And do have a blessed day. Please like, comment, and subscribe.